them in, of course.
Okay.
So I just want to welcome everybody to our Navigating Online Sales webinar for Thursday evening. I'm Jessica Renane. I'm your host with the Hoosier Young Farmers Coalition. And we'll be talking with Mike this evening from New Ground Farm. Before we get started, I want to thank our partners at Purdue and IU. We couldn't have pulled this together without their help, and they're spreading the word and helping us bring these farmers together. I also want to thank SARE for giving us a grant to help compensate our farmers for giving their time and their energy and sharing their stories with us over the course of these few weeks. So thank you to SARE for helping us put this together. As you know, we are recording this and we'll be posting it online for folks to be able to watch who couldn't join us this evening. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Mike.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. So as Jessica said, my name is Mike Record, and I own, along with my wife, Liesl, New Ground Farm in Bloomington, Indiana. And we're going to talk tonight about how we've moved our farm store online this year. So I thought I'd start by just kind of giving a description of our farm, what it's like and what we do. So as I said, I and my wife Liesl own and run the farm, sometimes with our 3 teenage kids, but that seems to be getting more and more rare. We grow certified organic vegetables. We've done that since 2014, and we're, as I said, in South Central Indiana. The farm itself is 22 acres total. About half of that is woods and the other half open. And we actually have an acre in production, plus 2 high tunnels and a heated propagation house. We both work the farm part-time. We have off-farm jobs, and we've had seasonal employees for the last few years. This year we decided to try 2 half-time seasonal employees. We thought that might fit our schedules a little better. Our sales outlets include independent grocers, which is about 20%, or has been historically about 20% of our sales, and the Bloomington City Farmers Market, which is about half of our sales, and then an on-farm store, which is about 30% of our sales. And that number has been growing over the last few years, and I think it's the most interesting part of our business. So that's the part that I'd like to focus on for this talk, to dig into how we moved that online. So the farm store is called the Bethel Lane Farm Stop. We started it in 2014 out of this renovated goat barn, and we started that fall by selling pumpkins. And the farm stop has kind of evolved since then. We've ended up basing it on a store in Ann Arbor, Michigan called the Argus Farm Stop, and we really like the model that they're using up there, so we adopted it for our own store here. And the mission of the Farm Stop is to build the local food economy by making healthy food conveniently accessible to people, and by providing a low barrier sales outlet for small scale farms. And to do that, we operate the farm stop on an honor self-serve basis. So that means it's not staffed. Customers come and choose their products, total up their purchase, and leave money in a cash box or pay with a mobile app. We aggregate products from multiple farms who sell their products on a consignment basis. So that means that the vendors own the products and set their own prices. And we work with them to decide the product selection and the quantities that they're going to bring. We do that based on sales and kind of where we're at in the year. The whole thing is really meant to be operated as a low profit endeavor. The fees are set to just cover the costs and maybe allow us to make some infrastructure improvements like refrigeration, which is something we're in the process of working on right now. But really the goal is to maximize the profit that goes to the farmers, the individual farms. It's hyper-local. Most of the vendors are located within a 5-mile radius of the farm, and all of them are within 20 miles. And it's, we like to think, hyper-convenient. It's open every day from 9 to 6. And there's the Facebook page if you're interested in checking it out. So the Farm Stop has been historically an in-person sales outlet, and it was probably the thing, along with the farmers market, which I'll also talk about, that really got impacted the most by the move to online sales. So when it became clear that COVID-19 was going to force some kind of change, we started thinking about the right way for us to respond. And we came up with this strategy of trying to leverage our existing knowledge and experience. We had, prior to starting this farm, we had a few years of experience packing vegetables for email orders and CSA shares. We also wanted to leverage the resources that we had at our disposal, which for us really meant that big red barn that we had, which could serve as a great pickup location for orders. And then finally, we wanted to try to leverage the tools we were already using and add as few new ones as we could get away with. And so that meant WordPress, which we were using already for our website. Square, we were already using that as a point of sale system to accept credit cards at the farmers market. MailChimp we were using to manage our email list, and then we used Google Forms for record keeping as well as data collection, like surveys from our customers. So given that strategy and the goal of making use of what we already had, in order to help us formulate a plan, we actually did a survey of our customers in late March. And it worked pretty well for us because we had an email list that we had been building for several years, and that consisted of both farmers market customers and the Farm Stop customers. So it was kind of an array of customer types. And we got actually a really good response rate on that. And the answers, the responses that they gave were really, really helpful in formulating our strategy. And in some cases, they were kind of surprising. So the most salient points from that survey were, first, when we asked them what options they would be most interested in as far as for how to get the produce, 68% preferred to order ahead and walk in for pickup as opposed to making use of curbside pickup or delivery or a couple of other options. And then when we asked them how concerned they were about shopping in person at the farm stop, only 12% were very concerned at all. And that was the one that really surprised us. We think that the reason for that is because the traffic at the farm stop is steady, or at least it has been historically steady, but it's very easy for customers to space themselves out. And depending on the day of week that you come, you might be the only one in there. It's also pretty open to the outside air. Two sides open up. We have sliding doors or rolling doors, and so it gets a lot of fresh air and light. And so we think that those two things probably contributed to most of our customers not being worried about shopping there in person. Then when we asked them how they preferred to make an order, 72% of them preferred to order from a website as opposed to something like a mobile app or maybe texting or using their phone to make a phone call. And then finally, we asked them what forms of payment they preferred, and far and away, cash and credit card were their preferred payment methods, followed by the mobile options like Apple and Google Pay and PayPal and Venmo. So given the results of the survey and as well as kind of our own interest in goals for our business and the outlets that we enjoyed working in most, we made the decision to actually do a hybrid model this year that consisted of both walk-in sales as well as online sales at the farm stop. We decided to accept cash as well as the one mobile pay option that we had already set up, which was Venmo for the walk-in customers, and then obviously credit card for the online sales. We did consider delivery. We actually asked about it in the survey, and not very many people were interested in delivery. And that combined with the fact that we just felt like we didn't really have enough resources to do a very good job of delivery made us in the end decide that we were not going to do delivery for the time being, which has been okay for us. And maybe we'll revisit that, but so far we haven't really seen a need for it for our business. So in the end, we decided that we were going to include online sales as a component of the farm stop, but not the only and exclusive form of sales. But even so, it combined with the fact that the farmers market, which I'll talk about in a minute, was also going to online sales. That meant that basically 80% of our sales were going to move into the ether, and that was a pretty scary idea, and took some time for us to, as my grandmother would say, make friends with. But once we had decided that we were going to do online sales, then we went through the process of trying to choose a technology platform for actually taking orders. And we looked at several different options. You can see the list here, but things like Gray's Cart and Harvey, Farmer's Web. In the end, though, we decided to go with the Square online store for several reasons. First, we were already using the Square point of sale, as I said earlier, at the farmer's market. So we were familiar with how that worked. We already had item catalog built, and it seemed like a kind of a natural extension of that. Plus, it really is inexpensive. There's no setup fee or ongoing subscription, so it doesn't cost anything to get it up and running. And then it has a relatively low transaction cost at 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, depending on how the sale is made, which for us so far this year has averaged out to be about 4% of our sales. And then on top of those reasons, it really does have a nice customer interface. It's easy. We think it's easy to use and intuitive. It looks good, and that was a big plus. And then finally, and this is unique to our situation at the farm stop, where we're actually selling products from multiple vendors. And I'll talk about this also in a minute, but even though it doesn't have a built-in way to handle multiple vendors, there is a way that we found to work around it. And so in the end, it actually met all of our needs, and has been a pretty good solution. There's a lot to say, I think, about the Square online store. It hasn't been perfect, especially early on. There were several technical glitches, but they've seemed to fix those, and they had been adding functionality to accommodate really more of the needs, I think, that people were experiencing with the stay-at-home orders because of COVID-19. So as a company, I think they've been very responsive and good to work with. But of all the things we could talk about, I decided to pick 3 that I thought affected us most directly and are, to me, the most interesting to talk about. And the first of those is the item catalog, which is a pretty important piece of any sort of online solution. Square does a pretty good job of letting you upload photos and add descriptions. You can even do descriptions with formatting if you wanted to take that route. But in the end, I think the important takeaway there is that photos and descriptions are important for an online system because they help the customers know what to expect. If you think about it, especially for new customers, which a lot of our customers this year are, and that's probably true for a lot of farms, if they don't have a history with you and your products, purchasing from you online is a pretty big leap of faith if they haven't had a chance to look at your products and inspect them visually in person. So being able to convey to them what they're purchasing is really important to help avoid any surprises and potential issues. So we ended up taking quite a bit of time working on the product photos. As you can see down here, this is kind of an example of what you would see in the online store. But we tried to use neutral backgrounds for the products and good lighting. And we tried really hard to show very accurate depictions of what the products were in terms of size and quantity and the condition they were in, how they were packaged, that kind of thing, so that customers really knew what they were purchasing, and when they actually received the product, it was what they were expecting. Another aspect the item catalog that I think is interesting and maybe somewhat unique to the farm stop, where we have multiple vendors, is because we have more products than just our own. Managing our own product list is pretty time consuming, but add in all the products from all the other vendors, and it really was clear that that was going to be pretty overwhelming. So again, Square doesn't really have a built-in way to handle multiple vendors in a store, but they do have a way to create users and give permissions to those users to the item catalog, but not other parts of your Square system. And so that's what we ended up doing. We gave our vendors accounts to the item catalog, so they can get in there and they can maintain their own item list, and we don't have to do that. So that means they can add new products, they can change the inventory count, they can update the photos or the descriptions and the titles and the price and all that without us having to do that. So that's the first, I guess, aspect of the online store. The second aspect that I wanted to talk about is inventory management, which I know, especially after talking to Jessica, is an issue that everybody, I think, who's moving online is probably struggling with. And honestly, it's something that we struggled with even before we moved online. I think it's something that comes with having multiple outlets. I know for us in the past, just trying to manage product that had been committed to the grocery store was a challenge, to make sure that we did have that when it came time to deliver, and that product hadn't been put out on the sales floor where a customer had come and purchased it before it made it to the grocery store. So inventory management's a big deal. Obviously, one of the big differences once you've moved online is that the timing is all different. If you have maybe done farmers markets in the past, it's possible to go to the market with whatever you happen to have available that week or that day, and maybe you didn't know that until the day before. You'd go out and harvest at some point in the week, and what you got is what you ended up taking to the market. Well, with the online selling, the timing is such that you're having to commit those products to the customer maybe before you've actually harvested them. And so that was something that took an adjustment for us, and it's actually taken a few weeks to really work out what the right timing is. But what it's required is that, and it's actually, I think, probably made the management of the farm actually better, but we have to do more field walks and a more critical assessment of what's coming, and whether it's the qualities where we want it to be. We need to be paying more attention so we can deal with issues before they come up, so that we can ensure the quality. But then it's forced us to become much better at estimating yield. So if I look at a bed of carrots out there, I need to know, this bed of carrots is going to yield X number of bunches. And then the next step then is to try to allocate that X number of bunches across the different outlets. So we may decide we're going to put 25 of those bunches on the online store and reserve the rest for in-person shopping, and then we have to divide up the remainder that's there for in-person shopping between the farm stop and the farmers market. So the bottom line here is that the timing is different with online selling than it is with other outlets, especially like a farmer's market. And so it's just important to be prepared to adjust your process to accommodate that difference in timing. That being said, having online inventory is actually better, we found, for some things like meat or cheese, where there are like lots of different cuts or maybe different weights with different prices, that in the physical store were kind of a hassle to deal with from a signage perspective. Really, it was just too much stuff to put on a price sign. And it's actually, we found easier to have our vendors enter those things, each cut or each weight of cheese, into the into the item catalog, and that way we don't need extra signage. All right, so those are the first two aspects of the online store. The last one is pricing. Because Square charges a fee for the credit card processing, that would affect our margin, and so we had to make a decision about whether or not to account for that fee in our prices. And in the end, we decided to increase our prices so that we could accommodate that transaction fee. And then because our customers tend to shop both with our online store and in person, we ended up deciding to make our prices the same for both outlets, which means that our in-store prices actually went up a bit. And so far, we haven't had any pushback from customers. They seem to understand the reason behind that and have accepted it. All right, so the second aspect to selling online is the pickup. And we decided to go with 2 pickup days a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, with corresponding order windows that would give us time to pack the orders. So our order windows are starting Friday afternoon through Tuesday noon, and you can pick up on Wednesday. And then ordered starting Tuesday afternoon through Friday noon, you can pick up on Saturdays. And that's a pretty straightforward model, but there's no built-in support in Square for those sorts of order windows. But there is a workaround that involves manually changing your store hours. So twice a week, we have to go in and we have to turn off Wednesday and turn on Friday as our business day. And then the other time of the week, we do the reverse and make Wednesday available and turn Saturday off. It's not a perfect solution because it's easy to forget, which we've done. And what happens if you forget is somebody might order on Tuesday night and Square tells them that they can pick up their order the next morning at 9, and there's no way it's going to be ready then because we're done packing for the Wednesday pickup. So that's happened a couple times, and we've just had to communicate with customers. But it would be nice if Square had better support for that, but there is a manual way to work around that. And then the packing of the orders, we ended up going with paper bags. We designated an area in the farm store for the order pickup. So we just used some wire shelving. We pack the orders in paper bags, and we print out the invoices from Square and staple them to the bag, and that serves as the label and the record of what the customer ordered. Because we are selling frozen meat as well, for customers who have ordered that, their order ends up getting split between the shelves and a freezer. We put their orders in a labeled plastic bag there. We have had some issues of customers not realizing or forgetting that they had meat that wouldn't be out on the shelf in a paper bag. So we've had to try to solve that with some signage here. But overall, the system has worked pretty well. All right, so shifting gears, I'm going to talk about the farmers market a little bit. The City of Bloomington staff decided to go online for April and May, and they chose a web-based solution for the market called Local Food Marketplace, which is actually, it's a very nice system. My experience with it obviously is just as a vendor, so I can't speak to any of the management side of it, although I know that it has increased the management workload pretty significantly. But it operates very similarly to how we set Square up. There is an order window that starts on Tuesday morning, so customers can order starting Tuesday morning through Thursday night. And then that means that we have to have our product selection and inventory updated ideally before that order window starts. So generally by Monday night, I've decided what I'm going to allocate to the farmer's market, and I've entered that into this system. I can adjust the inventory during the ordering period, but it's interesting. We found that the vast majority of the orders happen in the first few hours. There's orders coming in right at 6 a.m. and kind of build to a peak late in the morning, and then they really start to taper off. So we haven't found too much advantage to adjusting inventory up in the middle of the period. Another nice feature to this solution, Local Food Marketplace, is that you can print your pick and pack lists. And that there's an example of that down here where it'll tell you how many of each product you need for the upcoming market. It also will let you print labels with the customer's name on them and for each item that they've ordered. And we actually made use of that initially. We would print the labels and actually label individual like bags of salad mix, for example. Although we've stopped doing that since. But Local Food Marketplace, from a inventory management perspective, is actually a very nice product to work with, and is very similar to Square in that you can upload images, you can control the text and the description. The one thing about it is that's kind of nice is, as a vendor, you set your price, the price that you want to be paid for a product, but then to cover the fees, which the city of Bloomington is covering, the application will automatically increase the price by 5%. So for example, my carrots are $4, but the customer sees $4.20. And that covers all those additional costs that the city has incurred by offering this solution. So in the end, it's pretty similar to Square. The one downside is that we actually have two systems to manage inventory in. We have to do our inventory in Square, and we also have to do it in Local Food Marketplace. So, add to just the general challenges of managing inventory across a couple of different outlets, some of which you've you've committed yourself to maybe long before you might actually harvest, and it does start to get complicated. All right, so in the end, I guess the question is, how well is all this working? And there's a few things that we've decided. The things that are going well that we really like about selling online, and this again is pretty unique to our situation, our farm stop, where we have multiple vendors. It's very space efficient for us because we don't have to find storage space for all of our vendors' products that they might want to sell. The vendors will hold those products until it's time for us to pack, and they'll deliver them just in time. And those things only take up space in our store from the time that we pack them to the time that the customer comes to pick them up. If we didn't have that, if we were selling the same volume all in person, and the vendors were delivering these things maybe once a week, we would need a fair amount more storage, and especially refrigeration and freezer space. Another thing that's been great, although we haven't started to really dig into it yet, is that we're getting much better sales and customer data than we were getting before, especially with walk-ins like farmers market sales, and especially with the walk-in self-serve sales at the farm stand, where we weren't really there to see what was happening, although we did have some record keeping. And it clearly was meeting customer needs, especially in April and May, when the grocery stores didn't have a lot of options, were running out of things, and the markets weren't open the way they generally are. And then probably the last thing that seems to be beneficial is compared to our walk-in farm store, where a customer is not guaranteed to get what they might go into the store wanting to get. We might be sold out of something. With the online orders, at least if you're not going to get it because it's not available to order. So it's helped for those of some of our customers really like going to the farm store and seeing what's available and just working with what's there, kind of going with the flow. But there are definitely customers that have meals planned and they need specific things, and they really, I think, benefit from and like knowing that they are going to get what they have ordered. All right, so the things that are maybe not optimal, less than ideal for the online sales, the packing labor. Packing individual orders does take a lot of time. It's possible to make it more efficient through process and physical layout and just generally how you're approaching it, but it will take time, and it will take additional time if you're not already doing something like that. And then also, as I mentioned before, just forecasting the inventory, that's a challenge. One of the things that we've done to try to help with that is actually reorganize and I guess better organize our walk-in cooler. So we have parts or areas in the walk-in cooler that are dedicated to online inventory, other parts that are dedicated to the walk-in farm store, and then another area that's farmers market. So we actually take our total, say, all those carrots that we harvest, the bunches of carrots, and we physically divide them up in the cooler into the areas that correspond to their outlet. Another issue is just the logistics and timing of receiving the inventory from the vendors. So because we need time to pack the orders, that actually pushes their need to harvest or whatever they're doing to get the product to us sooner than we need to in terms of packing. So we've had to work with them a little bit on the timing, and have had to make some adjustments on kind of an individual basis depending on what their workflow is like. And then I think the last bullet point there I've really pretty much covered, just managing the pre-sold inventory with the walk-in. So all that being said, I feel like there's a big question out there right now, just based on the way things have gone for us the last couple of weeks. And that question is it still really meeting a need? We have seen our online sales dropping off as the other in-person shopping options are increasing. And I'd be really curious to hear, feedback from others on whether they're seeing the same thing. But it makes me wonder if this need still exists to the extent that it did back in April. And we're just kind of keeping a close eye on that and going to evaluate it as we go. All right, well, that's all that I had. Thank you. And I guess we'll open it up to questions now.
Thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time this evening for your presentation. My question, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, do any of the other farmers who are providing foods and goods help with the packing process at all, or did they just drop off their goods and leave?
At this point, they have not. We haven't really even asked them to, although they have offered, but it's just been easier for us to do it ourselves. We don't have a large space to do the packing in. It's, I don't know, what is it, maybe a 24 by 15 foot room at the back of the barn. It's our pack room, wash and pack room. So at this point, they have not. The labor, while it's been, certainly it's added additional labor, it's been manageable for us, so we haven't really needed to pull them in. Although moving forward, that certainly could be an idea that we could adopt, maybe come up with a rotating schedule where different vendors might do the packing on a different night, and that would definitely reduce the workload. So that's a good idea.
When all of this started back in March, in the beginning of your presentation, you said that I think you said 20% of your sales were to independent grocery stores. Did you see a fluctuation in those numbers at all through these past couple of months?
Well, so there are a lot of variables at play here that make it kind of hard, as I was saying earlier, to tease apart the reasons for different things. The bottom line is we actually started selling to the stores only just in the last couple of weeks. At one point, I wasn't even sure I was going to do that this year. Down here, things our vegetables have been probably 2 to 3 weeks later than they have been the last few years. So we're actually kind of running behind production-wise compared to where we were in previous years. And I, in my great wisdom, had decided before all the virus impact hit and the interest in local food just kind of exploded, I had decided to not start selling until a little bit later than I had in previous years. So that, combined with crops being a little bit later, really made us probably almost a month behind where we were last year. So I can say in the limited amount of time that I've resumed selling to the stores, their orders have been lower than they were last year.
Hey, Mike, I want to mention, I thought it was interesting to hear your decision-making for the different platforms you're using. And you answered one of my questions, which was, what were you using a different platform for the Farm Stop? And did you look at other farms to get that information? Did you kind of test any of those platforms out? How did you find that information? I think that's what's interesting for me, is to see so many farmers using different platforms and how they access information, just the different resources people use. And so
Right.
I'm just curious to hear how you landed on that, and for both of those. I think I'm just fascinated by this.
Sure. So honestly, probably a lot of those I learned about through some of the farmer groups in Facebook. There had been quite a bit of discussion about that. Growing for Market is a great resource, and I think a couple of those I had seen even a long time ago. I think which one was it? Let me go back here real quick. I think Farm Fresh Web. That one was one in particular that I knew that I had seen it advertised in the Growing for Market magazine, And I actually dug through the hard copies that I get of those magazines until I found that ad, and then I was able to go to the website and research it. Others like Gray's Cart, one of the other vendors, a friend of mine who does from Woods Edge Farm, who does our eggs and chicken, he had already known about Gray's Cart, and so he was he mentioned it to me, and then together we sort of sat down and looked at it and evaluated it. Let's see, Barn to Door I knew about because they had reached out to me. And then of course local food marketplace I didn't know about before the farmers market started using it, but when they chose that, I dug into it and learned a little bit more about it. So yeah, we basically, as far as like how we evaluated them, for pretty much all of these, we actually, with the exception of something like Harvey or what's another one? Well, Barn to Door, the ones where you really had to subscribe or basically pay, and there wasn't any sort of free trial. We actually set up an account and tried to work with it. So we did that with Gray's Cart. I think I played around with locallygrown.net. But basically, yeah, we just spent some time, looking through what they did. I don't find the marketing information very helpful at all. My day job is as a software engineer, so I totally get how the reality of an application can be somewhat different than what the marketing group comes up with and describes. So for me, I really want to just jump in and I want to start adding some products, and I want to see what it looks like, what the checkout process is going to look like for the customer. So for the ones that I couldn't do that with, like the Harveys and the Barn to Doors, although I did get a demo from Barn to Door, I pretty much had to rely on the marketing info and then just feedback I got from other farms or other people that had experience with them through things like Facebook. I think, for me, social media is a pretty good source of, people's opinions of things like this. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and you answered another question too, which I was going to say, what kind of IT support you have? And I kind of figured you were it. So,
yes, although it's a bit like the the cobbler's children going without shoes. It's interesting because we tried to minimize, like I was saying at the beginning, the number of different online and software solutions that we were using, and tried to add as few as possible. But even so, it's just, especially in the beginning, felt like we had so many different web apps that we had to go maintain. We have our website, and then we have Facebook and Instagram, and then we created a Facebook page for the Farm Stop, and then we've got Square and the Square online store, and then now the Farmers Market online store. And it just, it really felt overwhelming. And I know there's I don't think that the button to sign up for an email list still works. I've had a couple of customers tell me it's not working, and I still haven't gotten to it to fix it. But primarily, yeah, it's my wife, it's me and my wife doing the IT, and sometimes that means things just aren't getting done. But I think Square, I haven't taken advantage of it, but I've heard people say that Square has actually pretty good customer support. And like I said, as a company, I think they've been pretty responsive when there have been issues. I know that there's been at least once and maybe twice where the site, I think, was just down, which was totally out of our control. But I feel like they got it back up and running relatively quickly. At least for us, it didn't impact us too much. So yeah, like with so many other things on the farm, I've chosen not to outsource the IT, and it's kind of a DIY thing.
Fair enough. That's really helpful to hear. And one more question, and I'll let someone else jump in, was when you mentioned all those different social media outlets before too, do you feel like, have you ever heard from customers where it is confusing? Like there are too many sources for them to navigate through, or do you feel like you've got enough, people aren't inundated with that or confused by that? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't gotten any feedback, and it makes me think or realize that I'm not really honestly sure. So I guess I'll preface all this by saying I favor Facebook just because I find it a little bit easier to put the kind of posts that I want to put up there. Instagram is, I feel, somewhat more limiting, especially if you're doing it on a phone. I feel like the area you have to type in your message is so small, it's hard to for me to work in that. But I haven't really had any feedback from anybody, saying that they weren't sure which one to use. I wonder if a lot of people are sort of take the same approach that I do. They favor one or the other, and as long as our messages are getting out on both, maybe it just works out.
Mm-hmm.
What I have had, though, is people be confused about the difference between our farm Facebook page and now the Farm Stop Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Up until really last year, the two were kind of one and the same. It was Newground Farm, and we had a farm stand. But last year, we kind of formalized really the Farm Stop as sort of a separate entity. And actually, we as Newground Farm interact with the Farm Stop the way all the other vendors do. We pay the same fee. Our bookkeeping accounts for that fee, and we actually keep the books for the Farm Stop separately. So the message, for a lot of the customers that have been with us for a while is really coming from Newground Farm. And then we made this switch where we introduced, even though we'd been calling the farm stand the Farm Stop for a while, when we kind of formalized it with a Facebook page, that caused some confusion, not even just among our customers, but internally too. Like sometimes I have a hard time, should I make a post on the Newground Farm Facebook page or should it be on the Farm Stop? So we're still kind of working through some of that. I don't think so. Even though there's been some confusion, I don't think it's been detrimental. I think people are kind of just accepting the info they get, wherever it is. It doesn't really matter. And I think over time that'll probably work itself out as the Farm Stop really does kind of develop its own separate identity from Newground Farm.
Interesting.
So,
I appreciate you sharing. That's helpful to hear.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions?
This is Jessica again. Do you have any sense, or is there a way to know kind of the age range of the folks that are using the online system? Are you capturing a younger audience who may be more comfortable with shopping online than somebody who would just roll up to a Farm Stop? Or is there no way to know that?
That is a good question too. I'm thinking through what the information that Square gives you. I can't think of anything any sort of demographic data that you can get. Maybe if you had one of the paid plans, you might. I don't know. That's a good question. I have to look into that more. But the bottom line for us is no, we don't really know. I will say though that anecdotally, just based on observation, because I'm over at the farm generally in the mornings until middle of the day, and kind of come and go a little bit restocking and interact with customers some when I'm there. But just from what I've observed, I think the demographics has shifted this year. In previous years, I feel like it tended to be older couples and more people came in by themselves and not in groups or with another person. This year, we've actually, and I think it kind of maybe started at the end of last year, but I think I've seen younger customers coming in, and I've seen more groups showing up, which is interesting given the limitations, the distancing limitations of the virus. But and I've also seen more like families showing up, which is kind of interesting. So just anecdotally, I think at least for the walk-in store, I think there has been a kind of a shift in the customer base. Whether the online store has attracted a particular segment or not, I don't know, and that would be really useful information to have. So I might have to research that and see if we can find that.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Mike while we're on the tail end of our presentation here today?
No, great images and excellent detail throughout. I really appreciate it. You answered a lot of my questions throughout the presentation. So thanks, Mike.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and if anybody, feel free to reach out to me directly if you have questions or want to talk about more there's a lot. Like I said, all the variables are sort of hard to tease apart. And I feel like it would be so easy to talk about all the other things that really impact just the online sales. It's, they don't stand on their own. They're part of a bigger, business model and marketing effort. So, if anybody's interested, I'm totally game. I love talking about it. So don't hesitate to reach out directly.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time this evening, Mike.
You bet. Thank you. I appreciate you
All right.
organizing it. It's an awesome series. I've been having fun
Thank you,
watching the videos.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, Jessica.
Good night.